You're standing in the shower, hot water running down your back, and you're singing. Maybe it's a song you've loved for years. Maybe it's something that got stuck in your head from a commercial. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. You sound good. The acoustics in here, the tiles bouncing the sound around, the steam. You're hitting notes you didn't know you could hit. You sound rich, full, like yourself, but better. Then later, someone plays a video from last weekend's party, and there you are, talking, laughing. Your voice comes through the phone speaker, and your stomach drops. Because that person doesn't sound like you. They sound thinner, stranger, almost nasal. You ask, do I really sound like that? And everyone nods, like you've asked the most obvious question in the world. That's the voice gap. And it's not a glitch, it's not bad audio, it's something far stranger. The reason you sound different in recordings isn't because the microphone got it wrong, it's because you've been hearing a version of your voice your entire life that no one else has ever heard. Not once, not your parents when you were a baby, not your best friend, not the person you love most in this world. Every single time you've opened your mouth to speak, they've been hearing a completely different voice than the one inside your head. Here's why. When you talk, sound reaches your ears through two completely separate channels at the same time. The first is obvious. Sound waves travel out of your mouth, through the air, and loop back into your ear canal. That's air conduction. It's the same way you hear every other sound in the world. Someone else's voice, a car horn, music from across the room. All air conduction. But there's a second channel. When your vocal cords vibrate to produce sound, those vibrations don't just travel outward, they travel inward too, directly through the bones of your skull. Your jawbone, your cheekbones, the dense bone surrounding your ear. All of it conducts those vibrations straight to your cochlea, the part of your inner ear that actually processes sound. This is bone conduction, and it changes everything. See, bone is denser than air, and when sound travels through something dense, it doesn't carry all frequencies equally. Bone is particularly good at carrying low frequencies, bass notes, deep tones. So when you hear yourself speak, the bone conduction path is pumping extra bass directly into your inner ear, while the air conduction path delivers the regular signal. You're hearing both at once, and your brain blends them together into a single voice. A voice that sounds deeper, fuller, richer. That's your voice, the one you know, the one you recognize as you. But here's where it gets strange. When you listen to a recording of yourself, the bone conduction channel is gone, completely. Recordings can only capture air conduction. A microphone picks up sound waves traveling through air. That's all it can do. It can't capture the vibrations inside your skull. So when you hit play, you're hearing only half of what you normally hear, the half without the extra bass, the half everyone else has been hearing all along. The recording isn't wrong, it's accurate, more accurate than your own perception has ever been. That thin, unfamiliar voice, that's the real one. That's what you actually sound like to the outside world. And it gets weirder. This isn't something that just happens sometimes. It's been happening every single moment of your speaking life. Since the first word you ever said, since before you could form memories, the voice you think of as your voice, the one that narrates your thoughts, the one you hear when you talk to yourself in the car, the one that feels most essentially you, that voice is a biological illusion, a composite your brain constructs from two separate data streams, and one of those streams is entirely private, inaccessible to anyone else, a signal that begins and ends inside your skull. You've never heard yourself speak, not the way others hear you. You've heard a personal remix, enhanced with frequencies no one else can access. Here's the part nobody talks about. Your sense of identity is tied to your voice in ways you probably don't realize. When you imagine yourself talking, when you rehearse conversations in your head, when you remember things you've said, you hear your voice, the internal one, the one with the extra bass, the one that feels right. But that voice doesn't exist in the world. If you called yourself on the phone, you wouldn't recognize your own voice. If you heard yourself talking in another room without knowing it was you, you might not know who was speaking. The voice that represents you to you is fundamentally different from the voice that represents you to everyone else. And you have no direct access to that external voice. You can only experience it the way a stranger would, through recordings that always feel slightly off, slightly wrong, slightly not you. Now let's push this further. Think about all the things that make up your sense of self. Your face? You only see it reversed, in mirrors. Studies show people often don't recognize their own face in photos as quickly as they recognize it in mirrors, because the mirror version is the one they know, and it's backwards. Your body? You experience it from the inside, through sensation, not observation. You've never seen your own eyes in real time, only reflections and images. And your voice, the most constant sound of your entire existence, the sound that accompanies nearly every social interaction you've ever had, is a version that exists exclusively in your head. So what do you know about yourself directly? What part of your self-image is accurate versus a comfortable construction your brain has built and maintained for decades? Here's what sits with me. Everyone you've ever spoken to has heard a different you than the one you hear. Your voice has landed in thousands of ears over your lifetime, and not one of those ears received the signal you thought you were sending. The warmth you hear in your voice when you comfort someone, they might hear something sharper. The confidence you hear when you speak up in a meeting, they might hear something thinner. You don't get to know, you can only guess. And the reverse is true too. When you hear other people's voices, you're hearing their real voice, the air conduction version. They're the only ones hearing the enhanced mix, which means every person you've ever spoken to exists with a voice in their head that you've never heard and never will, a voice they think of as essentially themselves, but one that's completely inaccessible to you. We're all walking around carrying private versions of ourselves that no one else will ever experience. Voices that feel like home, but only to us. Think back to the shower, the tiles, the steam, the echo. You were singing and you sounded incredible. And here's the thing, you weren't wrong. To you, in that moment, you really did sound that way. The bone conduction was adding that richness, that depth. The acoustics were flattering. The experience was real. But the microphone at the party didn't lie either. That was also real, a different real, the real that everyone else lives in. Your voice doesn't just sound different in your head. Your voice is different in your head. A frequency-rich, bass-boosted version that exists in a space no one else can enter. The voice you've known your whole life belongs only to you, which means, in a way, the most familiar sound in your existence is also the loneliest one. A voice that speaks to the world, but is only ever truly heard by the one person who can never actually hear it.